In some previous presentations, we have discussed the meaning and definition of action research, the general characteristics of action research, and the aims and objectives of action research. In the current presentation, I'll briefly discuss the general data collection methods that are used in action research projects. So, first, just to recall the definition of action research is actually a form of self-reflective inquiry that is undertaken by practitioners or people in action, generally in social situations. And the basic aim of action research is actually not the development of theory, but the improvement and the rationality of the actions or practices. So generally, action research is an iterative process. That is, it is a cyclic process because it involves inquiry and then action and possible improvement and again further data collection and again action, and so it's a kind of cyclic process. The other characteristic of it is that it is participatory, where the practitioners take part in the process of action research. It is a self-reflective inquiry where the practitioners actually reflect on their own practices in order to find ways to improve their practices. Generally, action research is goal or action directed rather than with a focus on theory development. In most cases, it is collaborative, that involves a group of practitioners who conduct action research through collaboration, and it is based on the philosophy of continuous improvement of the practices or actions. Now, what are the some of the most important data collection methods? Include observations, interviews, focus groups, document analysis, questionnaire surveys, checklists, experiments, and tests. So we will briefly discuss these one by one. The first one is observation. Observation is one of the most important and you can say primary data collection method in action research, and generally observation is based on detailed and systematic observance or recording of the phenomena, and so close observation of events or actions and behaviors, processes and interactions. So generally, observation is a very useful action research data collection method because it helps in the collection of rich contextual data. Observation could be participant observation, where the researchers observe and also take part in the activity, and it could be non-participant, where the researcher's basic role is limited to just the role of the observers rather than as part of the action or the activity. Then the other important data collection method is the interview. So as generally in most cases, action research is qualitative in nature, and so we need in-depth reach to the perceptions and conceptions of the research participants. So that is why interviews are important as data collection method in action research. Generally, the interviews are based on oral interaction with research participants. This could be unstructured interviews, which are a kind of open-ended interviews. Such interviews are generally conducted by most experienced researchers. There could be semi-structured interviews which have some structure, some questions, but they are not entirely structured, and there could be strictly structured interviews, which are like a parallel with questionnaires. Again, interviews are a source of data collection or a method of data collection that helps in the accumulation of rich, detailed data. There is flexibility. It gives us the flexibility, and generally it is useful where we need perception-based data for our projects or in order to analyze and improve our practices. Then the next important data collection method is the focus group, which is like a form of interview, but generally this type of interview takes place in the form of small groups, ranging from 4 to 8, sometimes to 12 participants. And generally there is an interview type of environment in focus groups, where there is interaction and discussion around a topic of research. Generally, the research leads the discussion and facilitates discussion by asking questions and by giving prompts to the participants in order to get rich and detailed data. And this is a useful method because it helps the researchers in exploring multiple perspectives and also in coming up with arguments and counter arguments or counter narratives to particular topics and issues. Then the other important data collection method is the document analysis. The document analysis is actually a process in which the existing documents related to a particular topic or issue are actually analyzed. So these documents could be textual documents, or these could be records or artifacts that the researchers will analyze using content analysis or thematic analysis. Generally, document analysis is not the primary source of data in action research, but it helps in the triangulation or cross-checking of findings or facts from other sources, such as the observation or interview-based data. So document analysis is an important data collection method in action research. We can also make use of questionnaire surveys, although as I said in the beginning, that action research is generally more into the qualitative paradigm rather than in the quantitative one. But in a more pragmatic sense, quantitative data could also be made part of the action research, and in that case, questionnaire surveys are used. Generally, questionnaires are close-ended with limited choices, questions or items. Generally, as we know that questionnaires are used for large-scale quantitative data, so this could be done as part of some action research where the area of action is larger. Quantitative studies generally take questionnaire surveys, and generally such type of data that comes through questionnaires is standardized data where the answers are given in line with some certain standards or certain checklists. So then we also have the checklists where which are actually based on a review or analysis of existing documents and or data material or records or artifacts. Generally, checklists also is used as a secondary source of data that assist in the triangulation or cross-check of the findings or facts, for example, through observations and or through interviews. Lastly, in some cases, in action research, we could make use of experiments as part of the action research. And so use of experiments, although in action research is limited, but it is important in certain cases. For example, in certain educational contexts or in certain psychological fields, where we can make use of experiments as part of the data collection process. Experiments could be through experimental designs, or quasi-experimental designs could be applied in action research. Generally, the use of experiment in action research helps in the better validity of the research process, the data collection process, the reliability of it, and the authenticity, and most importantly, the empiricism of the process. But there could also be problems in the use of experiments in action research, such as the practicability of such experiments in practical fields, such as in education, in classroom situations, or in psychological testing. And there could be ethical considerations or concerns related to the use of experiments in action research. Lastly, tests. In some cases, preparation and administration of standardized tests or assessments could also be used in action research. So in some cases, these could be the sole source of data collection or as part of the experimental research design. Generally, in the field of action research, action research with tests is generally made use of in the field of education and psychology. For example, a teacher, educator, or a teacher as a reflective practitioner can make use of tests in order to check, for example, the utility or usefulness or effectiveness of one teaching method or another teaching method, or they can make use of tests in order to check the validity or reliability of certain evaluation techniques. So tests could also be used as an important data collection method in action research.